Shakedown.
Huh?
Thank you, Malone. I am Ryan, aka Rainforest, and I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, and I have let's see, as well as a bachelor's degree in computer science, but I also have spent 6 years in prison, and I got out last year, and my guest host is actually, he's not my guest host. He's just some guy who's on my show, according to him. And his name is Malone. He has spent 30 years in prison, and he also just got out.
I have a GED.
He has a GED. He's very proud of that.
Yeah.
And tonight we actually have a guest with us tonight to talk about the criminal justice system. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. My name is Justin. I honestly just a layman on this subject. I do sort of engineering tech support for a kiosk company in Colorado. So I know almost nothing about the criminal justice system apart from what's on television and books and Serial podcast. I do like the Serial.
I am also a big fan of Serial.
Yeah.
That is good. They do an excellent job of storytelling on there. So
the latest ones haven't been about criminal justice, but yeah, the first 2 seasons are very informative.
very cool. So tonight, that is why we wanted to have you on, is because you don't have a whole lot of experience with the criminal justice system. So Malone and I are going to pose a situation for you, and we want to hear what you think happens, and then we're going to talk about what we've had to deal with from our experience, and also, as you know, see how you think the best way to deal with the situation is, and we'll also talk about what our experience has been, and also what might actually help versus possibly what might you think help, or you might just get it all right, and we might have just been idiots who got locked up. So yeah. So what I was thinking is, and tell me what you think, Malone. Like, you're out, you're having a fun night, and then you get pulled over for a DUI. Does that sound like a pretty basic case, Malone?
I have heard such stories, yes.
Okay. So a pretty common story.
Sure. I've been pulled over before, so.
Okay.
That's
But not
unfamiliar.
but not for a DUI.
No, not for a DUI.
Okay. So and I'm gonna add another.
Well, I don't know if I've heard. I mean, I guess some people. I'm not really sure why you're asking this question. You're saying that is that one of the common reasons that people go to prison, or what?
I'm just trying to give him a scenario that he can talk through, so he can not just like ask him what he thinks abstractly, just thinks like, so he can like talk it out in his head, is the reason why I'm asking him this question, like specifically DUI. And I figured that's a pretty common one. It's not it's not either of our cases, even though it's a little closer to mine, but it's just a basic something. It's something that has the potential to be a felony and potential to get you prison time, and it's something that could go either way. And I don't want to go too extreme on, like, it's hard to go to the extremes because then you kind of get a picture in your head, and I don't want to do that. I want to do something just neutral, kind of a crime that anyone could be charged with, that most people think that anyone could be charged with, I guess is the best way to put it. That sound fair, Malone?
Yeah.
All right. So
A little long-winded.
yes, well, that's because I explained it. And I'm going to add one extra wrinkle. You've been out, you had a DUI, and you're not they didn't, you during the accident, you don't really remember. It's all kind of hazy, and you're not in the vehicle when the police find you.
Okay.
So, um, go. So
You're
what?
So
making this really complicated.
police
Maybe
approach
maybe
me.
I
They ask me what I'm doing out here, presumably like check my ID and stuff like that,
right.
and then proceed to arrest me. Is that
Right. Yes. So
okay?
that's the first step. So what are you doing in that situation?
Uh, so I'm assuming if I'm being arrested at that point that uh, I could ask at that point like why they're arresting me at that point, and they have to tell me why that it's is for a DUI, right?
No.
No,
They
they
don't
don't.
have
They can just throw me in the car.
they they don't well they're not necessarily going to they're so generally the first thing they're going to do is they're going to ask you, so what happened? What did you do? Why'd you do this?
Okay. Answer and
Yeah, Malone, like what are some other questions they're going to ask like right away?
I'm sure that, well, first thing in my mind, I'm thinking is that I think we're asking the wrong question. Instead of kind of a one fit all time, he's coming at it from the point of view, what is the actual procedure they're supposed to do? And that's one of the things that you and I are always talking about is that all the stuff that you're supposed to do, all these thoughts that are supposed to happen, and what you the rights and so forth that you relied upon aren't what happened at all. And for the most part, you don't get any of those rights. You don't get any rights other than what you fight for. Now that's not always the case because I mean police are human beings and are not absolutely monolithic. So I mean sometimes you be treated excessively or with or gently or whatever. But it's not always the case. It wasn't the case with time.
So I'm gonna sum up what you just said, Malone, because our connection is really bad right now. Basically, what you're saying is not asking the right questions. It's about what's supposed to happen versus what rights, because we're not getting the rights. We have certain rights,
That's
right?
yeah. Maybe I should just continue instead of asking you like what can I do at this step. Maybe I'll
we
just
have
like
these
go through a
beliefs.
general process.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Malone. What were you going to say about beliefs?
I'm just saying that as I have had general beliefs that that American that there's certain processes inalienable, like you're innocent until proven guilty, and all these other things, right? And almost all of those turned out to be wrong, or at least how I saw them to be turned out to be wrong.
Yeah.
Well, one
Turned out not to be what they thought it would be at all. I'm not going to do now, and go ahead.
right. So what Malone just said was he heard the beliefs that he had. Almost all of those were pretty much wrong, which is basically where we both kind of fell on this issue, and we didn't have any understanding of it. And I really, honestly, I like where you started out because I think you were hitting on that point, which was they have to tell you why you're getting arrested,
Yeah.
which is honestly that's actually in the law that they have to present to you a reason. Like there's actually it's the habeas corpus. It's a big part, but but really in practice the police do not have to tell you why they're arresting you. In the action, the habeas corpus they've pushed back till when it's in court. What actually happens in practice is that they ask you questions and they're constantly asking you questions. And here's a question I can ask at this point. So you're drunk. You know something bad has happened that you might be responsible for. Or you don't. It's unclear, but you have
Okay.
at least a strong suspicion, and um, and you're in that state and you're with a police officer. What is the best thing to do when he's asking you this question about what happened?
Perhaps I've been tainted by too many internet videos, but basically just don't talk to the police while you're getting arrested is the lesson I have learned from various both television and internet videos of I'm blanking on what that's called. basically the people who think they're free citizens of the U.S. and don't like the law doesn't really apply to them because they're free citizens. I forget what that movement's called, but anyway, yeah, basically stay silent, wait until you're
You mean like those
at the police
militia people
office.
that do that? That like move out.
The militia people that do what?
Say they're
They
outside.
do, they're into that. Well, what he's saying,
Oh
they have
yeah.
these certain beliefs about their rights and all that. And they say, I've heard of these people that join like these militias that do that, and then they run off, kind of sequester themselves in
Yeah,
compounds.
that
And
does
everything.
happen, but that's a separate thing. There's I really wish I could think of
Way
the
off.
name
I'm
for it
not
right
a
now.
first fan of my.
I personally, honestly, I think more often than not, what happens is not that people think they're above the law. I think that they get the impression that this will help them. Like there's an impression that the more they disclose, the more that this will help them going forward. The better impression it makes. Even though I did do this thing, that it's going to present myself in a better light. And I feel like because I mean it's like when you're a kid and you try and hide something from your parents. A lot of times you'll get punished for the thing you did, but then if you hide it, you get double punished for for hiding it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to put myself in such a situation, but I generally certainly my instinct would be to answer whatever questions people are asking me because like I worked with EMS for a while, and my parents worked with EMS and stuff like that. So in general, I want to like police officers, but certainly know from reporting and media and whatever that you have to be careful with your rights and what you say when
Yeah.
you're getting arrested or pulled over or anything.
And it's not for me, none of this is coming from a dislike or anything of police officers. To me, it's just they're doing what the training is for them. They're looking for a problem. It's kind of when you're looking for a problem, you find you're finding that's what you're looking for. You're going to find it.
Yeah.
And so when they find someone outside a car,
Yeah,
what
I totally agree with you there. I don't think that's what's going on at all. I mean, this scenario that you're talking about is very similar to the one that Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland was being arrested for evading arrest. There was no reason whatsoever to arrest this woman. The cop just was drunk with his own power. Why did Sandra Bland act the way that you were saying that some people think they should? That, but she did. She didn't believe that she should have been pulled over and all this other stuff. And so this cop is going to teach her a lesson about how she's supposed to respond to authority. And which is completely against the law. It's completely against a violation of all of her rights. And drug this woman out of her car and wrestled her down in the mud and arrested her. And his reasoning is that she resisted arrest, which is, I mean, it's circular logic. I mean,
Yeah.
She resisted treated badly by cops. Yeah, she resisted having authority. This cop's abusing his authority.
Use of excessive force.
She didn't do anything wrong or illegal.
right?
There was exactly all to the excessive force. That's why I mean I have a hard time saying the cops are getting attitude like that podcast you made me listen to about the Punisher symbol. Cops are getting this attitude. There's bad people, and I am here put on this earth to stop bad people. So the bad people become people that they don't like, and there are people that have an attitude of them and so forth. And then all rules go out the window at that point because they're bad people. They're criminals.
Yeah, that and
doing the right.
the podcast.
All the rights and everything. The pendulum of power swung so far in the favor of the police officers that, of course, someone wealthy, famous, have something for you like it, that just do whatever they want to you, and they do that. her so never know about this.
So I
Think
couldn't.
about that.
I couldn't hear the end of that, but I did certainly hear the pendulum swung so far in the power of the police. And I generally agree with that based on what I've seen, based on George Floyd, based on qualified immunity, stuff that I've seen cropping up in the news lately. But as far as the process goes, I still, I guess I generally feel like I don't know, in your average traffic stop or whatever,
Okay.
it probably goes less hectically on average, but I don't know. I mean, how widespread is the problem other than,
Well,
sorry, not,
yeah.
just how widespread is the problem is, I guess, the question I would ask.
And that's why I'm trying to make it very specific, so you can walk through the process and kind of see how it's supposed to turn out. The traffic, I feel like it goes all the way to the traffic stop, but it's not the same, because you don't, when you go to the traffic stop, you don't get labeled, but you can even from the traffic stop you can end up in the same place. It's just, but it's easier to picture it when you have serious hanging consequences in front of you.
Okay.
So, and like the reason I like the DUI example is because it's a good balance of what you can have. You can really have almost no consequences on one side, and you can have very serious consequences on others. We've seen both.
Yeah.
Both of us have had experiences with both. We actually had an episode where we talked with a guy who he had a DUI. He had 10 years, and those 10 years, I don't even know what year he was on, but when he was in with us, he had some very dire consequences inside because he was inside. So the question is, so what determines that?
Yeah. I mean, we can continue the scenario. I assume so. If I had my faculties with me, I would probably try to stay more or less quiet while I'm being handcuffed, put in the police car.
Okay. Which is great. That is the proper thing. Just so the people listening know, that is that you learned. I did not think the TV would teach that, but yes, that is a great thing to do. That is absolutely recommend. If you're in trouble, do that.
Yeah, it honestly, it does come from just internet stuff. A sovereign citizen is the thing I was thinking of earlier. People who say they're sovereign citizens and they can look into it if you're interested, basically.
Okay.
But in the comments, it's always like, know that you just should stop talking to them. If you're under arrest, just stop talking to them. Get in the car.
Yeah.
Sort it out later. If I'm drunk and I need to sober up or whatever, doubly so, I imagine.
Right.
If I can control myself. And then I put me in the car, bring me to the station, where I assume they put me in the jail cell at the station. I don't know how.
It depends, and so I'll walk you through this part, because this one is, you're not going to know it unless you've been there, and it depends on which one. If you're going to a city, in my situation, Malone can argue with me. He might have had a different experience on his end. But when I went to the city jail and I was in a small suburb, you went right to your own cell, or right to a cell, and
benches where
it's like a glass
cell in a
there's
city
there's a glass wall, and then the whole wall's lined with benches, and there's one toilet, and there's actually a phone in there, and then and so you're in there, and you can, and everyone gets thrown in that tank, and then that's where you are for actually where I started off at is I went to the hospital. They took me to the hospital. They cut off my clothes. They looked at me. I spent the night over there, and then they took me to the city jail. But in a DUI case, unless you are clearly injured or whatever, then you're going to the city jail. You're probably going to go to a block like that, and then. But if you're going to like county or something like that, you're not going to a cell. You're going to booking, and in both cases, it's the same thing. You're getting booked. And booking is where they're going to get all your information. They're going to take your fingerprints. They're going to
get your mugshot.
Yeah, your mugshot is like one of the last things that's going to happen. and it's a long process, but it's just you, like if like in Collin County where they eventually moved me to, Collin County, you don't go send a cell. There's a big room with TVs, two TVs on like, or two TVs on one side and two TVs on another side, and then there's like 3 rows of chairs facing each TV, and one is for women, one set of 3 is for women, and one set of 3 is for men, and they're just faced opposite each other, and you're just stuck in that room, and people are stuck in that room for days at a time, waiting to be processed, and yeah.
I've heard, like, because TV sort of presents the, like, you can hold them for 48 hours or whatever is the max you can hold anyone for.
Oh no.
But right, and then but I've heard conflicting stories about people being held in jail for ages and ages just because they don't have the manpower to process everyone, or
Maybe
whatever the case may be.
Maybe like a holding for questioning thing. There, I know there's like, I think that's 24 hours is like
Okay.
the max you can hold someone for. Like if you pull, like if an officer pulls someone off the street just to question them, but they have no proof. But if they find you at the scene of the crime, they're putting you in jail as a suspect.
Okay.
And but if they're holding you in
Any limit to how long they can hold you?
well, they got to give you a charge. So there's
That was actually one of the. That's actually one of the things they do with me that almost had the case overturned, is that they illegally arrested me for the sake of being able to hold. They arrested me up. They took me in and arrested me without any charge whatsoever. And then later on, after holding a window of the room for I don't know how long, they got enough information from me to charge me for a crime.
you don't know how long you were in there.
No, there was no box, there was no windows. All I know is it was early in the morning when I left. It was nighttime at night. When I got there, it was early in the morning. When I left and actually got taken to jail, it was nighttime. I have no idea how long there. I know that the time that they always the time that they actually put on paper that I signed, later on they didn't charge me or formally charge me like another one, which is capital murder. That was wrong. They like had it on there for like 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I walked out of that room because when I saw the window,
That's
Yeah, I mean, I've like never been locked in a room like
If
at
you
all in my
like-
entire life. It doesn't.
huh?
I didn't
Sorry, I
hear
missed that.
anything you just said.
I just said that cut you off, and so I didn't hear what you're saying when I was talking.
oh.
Oh, okay. I had just said that I've never been
It's okay.
locked in a room, certainly with no windows for any period of time. But
I mean,
it does seem like you should be entitled to some sort of information as a
well, eventually you do get,
arrestee.
you'll go in front of it. Like I was within it was about, yeah, I guess within 24 hours of when they took me in, they put me in front of a judge.
Okay.
And like the judge is actually that came to the station, and like in a county is actually the same building as the courthouse.
Okay.
So a lot of times when you go to to your traffic court, that's also where the jail is. So the judge, you'll go in front of the judge, and the judge determines says what your charge is, and then says what your bond is.
Okay.
And that's how it goes.
So you said there was a phone in the cell.
Yeah.
When you're there. So are you just allowed to call whoever you want, or how
They-
does that work?
From my memory, I couldn't make any calls on it right away. I had to wait. Actually, I think that phone actually it charged you for making any calls, but there was one where you could make free calls, and they pulled you out. They pulled me out after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Then I was able to make my call and call my family, and um and then that's when I called them, and then eventually I think I made another call. I just called collect, which is what you have to do if you want to make a call from that cell, and then I just called them and checked in with them. But that not all places are going to have phones in the cell. That was just
So there's no uniformity between processes on that. You don't have
no. Like, I mean, one big thing was like there's no uniformity at all, like about a lot of different things. That one had plexiglass walls and a phone in the cell. In Dallas, the next county over, or the next city over, there's bars going up and down the way. There's no phones to be had really at all. And then,
I mean, facilities aside, that's going to be city to city. But it seems like there should be some sort of process as TV shows. I want my phone call or whatever, where you can insist that you get a phone call.
You're gonna be processed,
right?
And it'll look a little different at each place. They're gonna take usually at some point in time, usually once you reach county, then you're going to, because they're gonna everyone from city. Well, so what I was saying, there is a bit of uniformity in the process. You're gonna go through booking. You're gonna go through that. They're going to probably send you, after you go to city jail or wherever, they're going to send you to county. The question is, then you're going to get you're going to have your charge, and then then as you're getting booked, for me it was before I got my mugshot and all that. That's when you get your charge and your bond set. All right, then. Once you get your bond set, like, what do you think is going to be like the next thing, and how do you think that works with a bond?
So I mean, I would assume that I would have called a family member who would then be calling the police station, trying to figure out what they need to do from there. Hopefully, pay a bond or whatever.
That is a great question. What do you think happens with your family member? Like, what should your family member do?
First thing, I guess, other than doing some basic research on figuring out what to do from there, I would expect they'd call the police station, trying to see like what happened, where do I need to go. So they would be communicating with the police station, trying to ask what steps they need to take. But are they able to just get information about me after being arrested?
They are able to get information.
Okay.
The police, I don't know what the police will do, honestly, on this front. They might be pretty helpful and lay out, especially once you have your bond. A lot of times, if they call too soon, like let's say they knew right away that about your crash and about your DUI, and they knew right away. They knew you got locked up, and they called the police station right away. The police would probably say, "Well, he hasn't seen the judge yet. He has to see the judge," and they probably would tell them over and over, he has to see the judge. He hasn't got an appointment yet. Once he sees the judge, and then the other thing is that they, and then once you see the judge, they might be able to tell them like this is his bond. And then that's about it. And like, I don't know what else they would tell them other than like, you need to contact this person with the bond money. Yeah, and that's it. And
you don't have any chance to talk to them between your phone call and potentially being released on bail.
There are chances. There's usually like in county, there's like another phone where you can call collect. There's another way to do that. But there are other opportunities to make calls, and you can usually sometimes you can actually call them quite a bit, but it's going to call that you're calling them collect.
Yeah.
But really the big thing that you're going to want to do is you want to get a lawyer because that's because
So I guess that's what when between being thrown in jail and being put in front of a judge, I guess I'm imagining something like I they take my possessions. Do they like put you in different clothes in front of the judge or?
they might sometime. I don't remember if I had. No, I was still in the clothes. Well, actually, my clothes were cut off at the
Yeah,
hospital,
injury.
but I was wearing like hospital scrubs when I went in front of the judge.
Really?
Yeah, so it they're not going to put you in any issued outfit or not necessarily.
Okay.
You can they can put you in front of the judge in street clothes or whatever you were arrested in. And that could be covered in blood. It could be messed up. It doesn't matter when you go up in front of the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll and then eventually once if your bond hasn't come in by the time that they're gonna to lock you up or like to move you into or to assign you a cell, then they'll give you your clothes, your prison issue clothes, and then put you in a cell or your jail issue cell clothes, I should say.
Okay. And so when they put you in front of a judge, I assume you don't have a lawyer at that point, or can you get a lawyer at
You can
that
get
first?
a lawyer at any point
Any point.
but the like if you're trying to get a state like or a free attorney or free representative, well, then that's going to take a time. That's going to take a while.
But when they're setting your bond, you probably haven't had a chance to get a lawyer there, unless your family's been able to find one and get one.
If
there
your family should be working on it by that point and here's the other important thing that most people don't know. You don't have to go through a bail bondsman. You don't have to your family because only certain people can pay bonds. Your family can't just go up and drop a pile of money off at the police station and get you out of jail.
Sure.
Police won't accept it. I've watched it several times. They won't accept it.
Okay.
Now, either a certified bail bondsman can pay off the bail or a lawyer. So you have to pay off to get you out, to pay off the bond, you're probably going to have your lawyer, which you're going to need anyway.
Yeah.
So you need your lawyer and you don't have to like try and get up. The police might tell you need a bondsman, but what they mean is you need a lawyer, like or someone who is certified to pay off your bond, which lawyers are. Lawyers in that county are.
I will say, luckily, I think my family's a little more familiar with the procedure than I am.
Right.
It's not not a ton of history in my family, but
right.
enough that
Yeah.
they know something that I certainly would not.
But
I am imagining something a little more, I guess, regimented in terms of like you have to have these steps completed ahead of time, and you're just it sounds like it's basically up to the person to get that all started and make sure that the police don't just like push you through with
right. And that's the thing is that it's not there's no like, do you want a lawyer at this point? They're not going to ask you. And here's something that happened with me. I knew my family was getting a lawyer. I knew they were getting a lawyer, but I knew it was taking some time. And I didn't know when they got the lawyer. But I will say before I got the lawyer, the police did pull me into an interrogation room. And then they started asking me a whole bunch of questions. And they started asking a ton of questions. And I am sure I'm not the only one that they do this to.
Yeah.
And they knew that my family had a lawyer at this point because the lawyer had contacted them. Mm-hmm. So and so they were asking me a whole bunch of questions.
And they did not tell you that you were getting or you had a lawyer at that point.
Right. Yeah. They did not. No one's telling me that I had a lawyer because there's no contact right now, really. And so they're not telling me, and then they're asking me a whole bunch of questions, and I'm just telling them I'm not answering the questions. and they dropped it after about like half an hour, and then I went out, and then seriously, they led me right out of that room, and my lawyer was sitting right there. That was the first time I saw my lawyer and knew that I had a lawyer. So, yeah, there that stuff like that.
Yeah, and are these like a different set of? So the police officers arrest you, and then is it like detectives that come and question you, or is it just different police officers, the same police officers? Do you?
Well, it's all different police officers because there's the police officer who picked me up the night before, like it's not his shift. Like I'm sure I had
I guess
interaction.
I'm just wondering, are the same cops who go out and arrest people, are they the ones that do the questioning, or is it a separate?
I think they all do all these different tasks. I don't think
Okay.
there's like a set. There's not like they always talk about like desk workers and all that kind of stuff. No, I think everyone does everything. I don't think from what I saw,
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but from what I was seeing, there wasn't like one set that specifically did desk work and one set that specifically asked questions and one set that went out. They were all kind of rotating.
Okay.
They all have different shift. I later on in in prison, there's officers there, and the officers like what would happen is the officers would come on shift, and they wouldn't know what they were doing that day. They would just be assigned, and then a lot of times you'd see them, they'd be really annoyed with their assignment. Like they'd be like, "Oh, I got this again this day," or they'd be really excited, be like, "Thank goodness I have this assignment today," and like because they don't get to choose, it's like it's
Yeah.
random, and like
And you like
sometimes
find out on the day.
yeah, you find out like on your shift as soon as you arrive for that shift. That's when you find out what you're gonna do that day.
All right.
And sometimes your shift, you might arrive for your shift and you might find out that you're working 2 cities over.
So police, like when you're hired, you're not like
Like this is
working in your own community
this is
always?
prison officers.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
Yeah, so prison officers they would find out they're working 2 cities over because there's a prison that's understaffed.
Okay.
And really literally, I mean, all of the Texas prisons were understaffed, but they would take for whatever reason, they're all understaffed, but like one might be especially understaffed and they just take as many officers as they could from a nearby one and send them over to that one.
Yeah, I don't even know if I can imagine what happens in jail after that. Do you? So how long between arrest and actually like getting in jail for you? I guess.
Well,
Or
okay.
in prison.
Yeah, okay,
Not
in
jail,
prison.
Prison.
So we can go through this process. So what happened? All right, so we had county. There was then eventually, and then I had met my lawyer. A couple days later, I had bond. The only reason it was a couple days later was because my family was worried about the victim's family retaliating. That's what they were worried about. So they waited a couple days and then bonded me out. And then when I got out, then the process is trying to get a court date. And so how long do you think it's going to take to get court dates?
I mean, it seems like it's probably a huge variability from state to state, but I know we are hugely understaffed in our court system in general, and the backlogs are pretty huge in places. So I'm gonna guess at least a month, but I don't know if that's realistic.
I would say it actually you're right as far as that was my grand jury indictment took about a month. So the grand jury indictment was what a grand jury indictment is, and not every state has grand juries. It's all the grand jury says is there is enough information, there's enough evidence to proceed with this case. That's all that a grand jury does, and you'll hear it in the news all the time.
To me, that's the most bonkers part to me. Like just someone who is charged can have a month or more, like years. I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not, but I feel like it can be years for people between being charged and being getting to get a court date, like no proof, no evidence, no nothing is necessary. Just charge to court date. You can like lose your job. You can have, I mean, you can't take care of your entire life for
it costs
that period of time. And
my
of course
my
it costs. Yeah.
my bond was like thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. And so if you can't afford it, you're in jail that entire time. And so you're sitting in a cell that entire time. Well, I guess you're not sitting in a cell that entire time.
Yeah.
I don't like that's also not an accurate picture of what's going on in jails. But the thing is that when you're having that, when that's going on, so you have, let's see. So you have the grand jury indictment, and which could take a month just to get that, and you could be sitting in a cell that entire time. Then you have more court dates. There's not just one. If you're going to actually fight your case, and say that you're not guilty, then you have a trial to prove guilt or innocence. All right, that's going to take, if you're in jail, which those are the ones who get the top billing, that's going to take at least 6 months, depending on how serious the case is. And then after that hearing, that hearing could take a week on its own. It could be broken up into many different parts. Then after that's done, and if they say you're guilty on that one, then it could be another 6 months before your sentencing and seeing what that's going to be and deciding what that verdict's going to be. Not everyone has a separate sentencing hearing. Not every state has that. So there is some variability in that one. But like in Texas, like I immediately went and said that I was guilty. Now, this is a question I posed to you. What do you think of that? Was that the right legal maneuver, or what do you think that was? How would that go in the situation I posed for you?
So, in the situation where I genuinely don't know, am I being charged with more than just a DUI?
In your situation, I'm just saying with a DUI.
Just the DUI? I guess I'd say yes. If that's all they're charging with, I have a DUI. I know I was drunk. Yeah, I would say probably admitting that much. If I genuinely didn't know what happened prior to that, and I suspected, I don't know, if I suspected something more, or they were accusing me of something more, or if I thought I was drugged or something, I suppose.
This is a point that Malone and I got into on the very much on the last time, on one of the other podcasts, which is, does it help your case or does it hurt your case? And you're right. Maybe on just a DUI, it might help accepting responsibility. The problem with it is that because you've accepted responsibility, the prosecutor can now hit you with everything that they've got. There's no reason to really go lenient on you. Now, there's also, because it's just a DUI, there's no reason to make an example of you either. But maybe there was the governor's son just got hit by a drunk driver, all right, and your case is coming right after that. Now the DA might be trying to make a name by saying I'm going tough on DUIs.
Yeah.
And there might be a situation like that. And so if that's the situation you're in, and you say you admit that you're guilty, and you go in front of into that courtroom, then the DA has no reason to give you a plea deal.
And they don't have have to tell you exactly what your sentencing might be or anything.
You have your sentencing's within a range.
Yeah, and they do tell you that ahead of time.
I'm trying to think of what. So a DUI in Texas for in the first 3 DUIs, it's 2 to 20. would be your range.
That also seems so bonkers to me. What that kind of range? Like, what is?
So that's okay. In Texas, there's different types of felony charges, and if you get felony DUI, then it falls in the same range as my charge, which was intoxicated manslaughter, and as in the same range as a bunch of other different crimes, as like robbery, or which is when you steal, or larceny with a weapon or something like that. It all falls within the same, a very broad band. Now, if you like murder someone, that's 5 to 99. Like, and that's in
Sure. Yeah, I can understand those sorts.
Yeah, and
Ranges, I guess, but
it
does seem like a lot of these minor crimes, the ability to take 20 years from someone's life for
right.
the effectively.
And maybe at one point in time, the intention is the judge, they would have these broad ranges so that they could have, the crime would fall in this range, and then the judge could use their, understand the situation and then make a call on that. But that doesn't seem to be how it works in practice. Generally in practice, the judge really isn't the one deciding, because the one who decides is actually the DA. The DA makes the plea deals. And if he makes a plea deal and you sign the plea deal, then the judge is going to generally accept it. And that's 95+ % of cases are resolved that way.
Yeah, I think they talked about that in the second season of Serial at some point. With it. That they went over that a fair amount. It's been a while.
Yeah,
I do remember the DA being a huge part of that decision-making process, and they don't know anything about the case. They're basing it off of almost the political landscape, not necessarily politics itself, but like the politics of the.
Well, often DAs are an elected position. So if you're an elected position, and you're not going to get elected as DAs by saying, I gave the minimal amount of punishment to the most DUIs. That's not how it's going to work.
Yeah. What's
going to work is going to say, I gave 20 years to every DUI who crossed entered my courtroom or something like that. Yeah. Or they usually, in each county or each jurisdiction, they have a certain crime they target, and they love to make a big fuss about. In my county, and intoxicated manslaughter was the one, and that was what I had, or any sort of drug and alcohol offense. They love to hit on those. If some other counties, it's not as bad. In Tarrant County, they had a kid who killed 4 people when he was driving, and they gave him probation. So, I mean, this is like, that's one county over. So, it's totally, it's dependent. Same state, same general laws that they have to follow, but there's different discretions, and they don't all have to hit it all the same way. But like I said, it doesn't do the DA, if they're trying to get elected, they're not going to promote themselves by saying they were the most lenient.
You're not getting elected on a soft on crime platform.
Right.
In general. Yeah.
So, and that's what hit me. That's what hit Malone, who unfortunately, I wish his stuff was working better. But that's
cellular connection hotspot's never going to be the best. I don't know what.
I honestly think it's a combination of things, but we'll get it figured out. That's But anyway, so let's see. So that's a big part of it. The DA is going to decide the bigger factor in deciding your sentence. It's not the judge, it's the DA who decides the sentence. You're going to sign off on it, and then
I mentioned they don't know a whole lot about the case. Do they? How much do you know? How much they get? Do they get the details?
They can get all the details if they want. And one of the biggest problems is a lot of times the DA does not. They do not have to disclose the majority of it, or they can, like the defense, they have to eventually disclose everything to defense. But usually they won't disclose everything to the defense until the night before the hearing. So if you're trying to mount a defense, you can't even see what they have or what the evidence is until the night before the hearing.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So they have a ton of power if they and that, and to be fair, like now if every single person said no to plea deals and decided to fight their charges, the criminal justice system would grind to a halt immediately. They couldn't process the cases. There's far too many cases. We have the most people locked up per capita by leaps and bounds compared to any other nation. Compared to China, like we lock up more of our population than China, which is, to me, it's crazy.
We pay an arm and a leg for each one of them too, as what I've heard.
Yes, it's not just that we pay an arm and a leg. Like it costs a lot of money. We we do to a fair amount. Okay, I'll ask you a question. You get locked up, and I said we're not just sitting in a cell all day. What do you think happens if you're locked up in any place for any extended period of time?
Jail or prison? Which?
I'll go with prison. Prison is just, so I'll tell you the difference between jail, in case you don't know. The jail is holding until you get your court, until you've gotten sentenced, and then prison is where you're going to go for the long haul.
Yes.
So
yeah, I did know that.
Okay.
Okay. So I know very little about prison. The only things that I would have seen are probably the higher security levels in media.
Okay.
But I guess I would imagine you're generally stuck in a room for a large portion of the day, and then you do things like, I know things like wood shop. There are places you can go to do things, but I don't know if it's a matter of doing it every single day. Is there a specific schedule? How often are you let out? Like twice a day and stuck in your room the rest of the time? So, I'm imagining you get at least a little bit of freedom for a portion of the day.
So one thing is that like I'll tell you, when you first get into TDC, they put you in a transfer facility, and like transfer facilities in TDC, for the most part, they're open dorms. So like there's just bunk beds lining the outside of this like glass walled room. And then it's just tons of bunk beds in one, and then an open space in the middle, and then bathrooms and showers that you can see directly into. And that's where you live. And then you're stuck there for 30 days. Now you might get called out for, you're going to get called out for testing at 4 o'clock in the morning, between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning. You're going to get called out for testing.
Every morning?
Not every morning. It's going to be kind of random. You're going to get lay-ins the night before saying, hey, you're going to have to get up for this at between 2 and 4 in the morning or whatever. And then once you've completed your 30 days, then they're going to move you to another dorm. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go, I can't remember what it's called, but you're going to get classified, and then you're going to, that's when you're going to get your job. And you're going to get your new living assignment, which is going to be in another dorm, exactly like the one you were in, but it's going to be with people who have the exact same job as you. And you might be working in the kitchen, or you might be working in the fields, and that's it. And if you're working in the fields, you're getting up at, your job starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. They're going to call you out to work at 4 in the morning, and then you're going to go out for half the day, and they're going to make you swing an Aggie, and all day long, and 4-step through like jungles basically. And
yeah, I mean, I don't know how much of it is exaggeration, but it feels very much like slave labor in the modern era for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the transfer facility. It does, once you get to an ID unit, or as you spend more time, you can get other jobs like maintenance or making clothes or furniture, or it just depends on the unit and where you're at, like selling commissary and things like that. you can get all sorts of different jobs, but you're going to have a job. You're going to be assigned a job and you're going to do it. And you might in Texas, there are many goods that are made by inmates in Texas. There's many goods I'm sure in Colorado that are made by inmates. It's just a matter of you don't know. And then so even despite the fact that they have all this free labor from the inmates, it does cost a whole lot of money to feed all of them. And then any excess food, which there's always excess food, they will dump or feed to the pigs. And so there's that goes to waste too. And it is a huge drain on, there's no calculus where I can see this being a profitable.
Well, I do know that it's not profitable for the state or for the country. For private prisons, they seem to manage to do it. But yeah, I only know what like headlines and like lefty sphere commentary says about these things. So I do take it with a grain of salt. But
yeah,
our private prison industry is a big talking point.
Yeah,
these days,
private prisons are. It's funny because like a lot of times I've heard a lot of awful things about private prisons, and honestly, everyone tried to get to a private prison because private prisons, they were run better. Like they were like, one thing is that like, so commissaries where inmates can spend, like families send people their money, and families send inmates money so they can spend it on like other excess food and stuff like that. Well, prisons don't feed very well. So inmates want to buy food and stuff like that. So getting to commissary is a big deal. If you have money to buy commissary, you're going to want to buy it. So you would think that they would want to make commissaries easily accessible.
Yeah.
But in public prisons, they make it next to impossible to access commissary. In fact, a common.
Why?
I don't know. I could not tell you. But they make it next to impossible. Of common punishment is that they'll just shut the commissary down. But in state prisons, they will make sure, if you want to go to commissary, they will make sure you go to commissary. You can go to commissary every day of the week if you want to. And in state prisons, I
imagine the profit margins on that are pretty steep.
They're crazy. Yeah. I mean, they seem relatively cheap, but like it's one single ramen is like $1. Like, so, I mean, it's not, or it's 50 cents, but that's still, you can buy 10 of those for $1.
Yeah.
So there's, there's definitely a fair amount of markup on it, and that is a huge moneymaker if they wanted it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say about the prison system other than it seems like a disaster in terms of it's profitable for the wrong people, doesn't benefit the state most of the time. It's I know there's like perverse incentives to get people in there from, I think private prisons have like quotas, which to me seems bonkers. Like if you're trying to encourage people to commit fewer crimes, you shouldn't be encouraging the state to charge smaller and smaller crimes just to fill it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
when I hear quotas, I hear there. So one of the prisons I was at, there was a quota problem there, but the quota problem was that one of the warden there got in trouble because they had a quota system, which was every officer had to write up 2 inmates before the end of their shift, minimum 2 inmates. And if they didn't write them a case, which cases can prevent you from getting parole.
Yeah.
And if they didn't write up 2 inmates, then the officer would get a case. And so the officers were constantly looking for write-ups, and they'd write up total. A lot of times what officers would do is they would just come in and they would just write up an entire dorm. Just come in and write up an entire dorm so that all the cases would get thrown out. But even if they do that, all of the inmates get called out. Like they call out all of the inmates to go to court and everything. Like even in prison, you have court and stuff like that, and you have to go deal with this. And court's not like court is even more inconvenient in prison. Like it's in the middle of the night. You'll be called, like it's going to be called when you don't work. So you're not going to get out of work for going to court. So it's going to be called at a super inconvenient time for you. And it's extra punishment on top of whatever it is you're accused of.
I mean, yeah, there's.
I'm not trying to like just lay down a whole bunch of awful stuff on you. That's not the goal of the podcast or anything like
I
that.
get that. And I don't want to like propose utopian society and talk about that for a while. But I cannot imagine we can't figure out a way to have the process just be easier for everyone, be easier for the officers, and easier for the inmates, easier for the court systems to process through it. It's just
so,
and most of it seems to just be the quantity of people we choose to force through this system on a regular basis, or the not necessarily how many. Like, I mean, if people commit crimes, they commit crimes. So to some extent, we got to deal with that. But the fact that the process is so elongated means that it basically feels like it's clogging up pipes, even if things are going relatively smoothly.
Right. My general take on it, and it's Malone and I are pretty similar on this, is that the problem is that you have to be focused on rehabilitation and not on punishment.
I was gonna ask, like, so you're working, and that
right.
I know that at least Republicans think that just like work rehabilitates on its own. But do you have like other forms of rehabilitation?
There were some really great things, really great opportunities that I took advantage of. But I'm going to say they did not make those opportunities easy. I had carpentry class, and I really enjoyed carpentry class. I would have never even thought of learning it. Mm-hmm. It was one of a very select few classes that were available on the unit I was at the time. And I took it. And there were many times I could not get out of my cell to go to that class. And like, because of the officers, because they were like, I can't open the doors. They're locked. So like, so
just let you walk out of your room. Huh?
Right. So like you have to like sneak around to try and get to class sometimes. And it doesn't make any sense. If the wrong officer's working in your dorm at the time. And like there's plenty of times where I would be worried about, like, I'd have to make a decision. Like, do I want to go to class today or do I want to stay, which write-up do I want to take? Yeah. Because I have an officer who's going to come in and they're going to search my cell if I'm not in it. Or if I go to class, I'm going to get a write-up for not going to class or whatever. So I got a
situation for you.
Yeah. So they don't make it easy. And like, there are so many guys who took college classes and I watched them so many times, like they would cancel classes and they wouldn't tell them. And these guys would be waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And then they'd finally find out that no, there wasn't any class, or they'd be waiting and they'd watch as other guys would be going to the class, and then another officer would say class is canceled. Like, no, the other guys just went, and they'd be sitting there arguing with the officer, and then they'd get like a case or whatever for arguing with the officer, even though they were right, and then they'd get sent to class. And this like just that was how they got their degree, like was going and dealing with that. Malone.
Props to anyone who manages to make it through that.
Malone's mom tried to put him through college, but he had to deal with fights all the time. He kept on having to deal with fights constantly, and then the staff lied to his mom, saying that he was starting the fights, and that he was ditching school, and So like all these are all things that they have to deal with constantly, and like they don't. If you were if someone wants to go to school, let them just go.
Yeah.
How about it?
I mean, I'm definitely with you guys. It does seem like education and rehabilitation need to be the focus of our prison system. Like, and it is up to that system to prove its competence to, I mean, to the inmates to a certain extent, but to the general populace on the whole, and just taking people away from it and then bringing them back later isn't getting us anywhere. Especially since I think recidivism rates
They're crazy.
not great as far as.
Well,
I don't have any information in front of me, but
recidivism rates are something like 70%, and the thing is that what it really ends up as is if you go to a prison, you're more likely to commit a crime after you go to prison than you were before you went to prison. So,
yeah,
yeah, and it makes sense because you learn more about. I learned way more about committing crimes inside of prison than I did outside.
Yeah.
So, and I still there, and part of it is because I was constantly at odds with the officers. So I have a very strong tendency to not want to deal with authority, and I want to kind of yeah. And I had to learn. I had to learn how to sneak around them, and I can be very good at it when I want to be. And Malone can be even better. But you learn that from being inside.
I mean, obviously, I know there are a bunch of problems with the system, but at a baseline, it does feel like you should be rewarded for being cooperative with the system. You should be able to, the more cooperative you are, or the more, not necessarily cooperative in the individual cases with the officers, but cooperative to the process, to where if I want my education, I do these things, I follow these rules.
Right.
I am rewarded with
I firmly believed that when I went in. I firmly believed that's how it worked. And I will tell you, no one is keeping track of that. There's no guardian angel or parole. This is going to be my final question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
The parole board. How do you think that works?
My only knowledge of the parole board is Shawshank Redemption. So
okay,
that's not all. I guess they bring you in front of a bunch of seemingly.
So you go in front. You go in front of a parole board.
Yeah.
Okay. A board of people.
Yeah, and they look over notes from presumably officers or whatever, and decide. I don't know if I guess I want to ask. I assume they ask you a few questions to try to get a sense of what your experience in the jail or whatever, and then just decide whether you stay in or leave.
Okay.
And like the DA stuff, unfortunately, I fear it has more to do with quotas and how many people they want to let out that year than it does with the actual facts of the case in front of them.
All right. I'm going to tell you how it worked in Texas.
All right.
But I'm going to tell you that is exactly the picture I had in my head with parole board. That's like the picture I had for years in my head, like about this parole board.
Is it also from Shawshank Redemption? Is that?
It might be. I did Shawshank. I love that movie. It's a great movie.
Top three, I'd say. Three movies.
It is an excellent movie. So, what happens is this: when it's your date, or approximately your date to go in front of the parole board, or your parole date, your file, which has a limited, it has a certain number of checkboxes on it, and it doesn't have all of your classes. It has like your cases in it, and it has like certain classes that the state takes care of, and it only has ones that are within a certain time frame. It's usually a few years, so you're usually pretty good on that. But that file is handed off to the first parole board member. The first parole board member looks at that file, usually for less than 30 seconds, makes their vote, and then forwards it to the next parole board member.
Like an email chain? Or?
Yeah, like an email chain. Then they make their vote. And if there's a disagreement, it gets sent to the third.
And that's it.
That's it.
3 people.
The average amount of time that an inmate in Texas with their parole board member looks at their file is less than 30 seconds. If they have a parole attorney, it's 2 minutes.
I don't know. I don't know what to say.
And on that, we will
Yeah.
we will end this extra long.
I don't even like what.
Yeah.
I guess my question about that is these parole officers. What is their I guess qualifications for this? Are they ex-police officers? Are they in like what is their training to get to know whether a person deserves parole or not? I guess.
I believe those are elected positions too. I'm not sure if they're elected or if they actually I think they're appointed positions.
Okay.
And some of them are ex-police officers. Some of them are social workers. But they're usually.
I would hope that all of them are social workers. That's what I would. I know that it's not true. But that should be.
There were lawyers that would hand out these charts of like each individual parole board member in each individual jurisdiction and their answer rates.
Okay.
And it like some of them are like 90% no. Like it crazy numbers. And they would break it down by crime and everything like that. And it's crazy. It's like some of these people, yeah, they're not handing out parole. Other ones, they're far more understanding. I was very fortunate because I came up for parole during a pandemic, and Malone was very fortunate because we were able to find like a team that was looking to help someone exactly like him. But it's it's hard.
Yeah, and we didn't discuss any demographic stuff, but it is. I imagine, like as you say, they were looking for a case like his,
Right.
or a person like him, and it feels like that should not have anything to do with how long someone's in jail. Or
No.
how often they get parole.
And I will tell you, there's lots of projects out there that are trying to get people out of prison, but their resources are so limited, and there's so many people trying to get out that they get like Innocence Project.
Yeah.
Innocence Project is great, but they're bombarded all the time.
Yeah, I imagine.
And
it's not even
yeah,
like I was in EMS for a while, and I wanted to learn more about like how I could learn more about what jobs you can get in the court systems or police stuff, and it feels any sort of job in that industry seems very obfuscated. I can't look at how to get into it. Maybe if I had investigated in school or something like that, it would be easier.
like if like trying to be like an officer or something like that, or
Not necessarily an officer, but like how can I be involved? Even volunteering. Like,
Oh,
I know
yeah.
there's like some projects helping immigrants through court and stuff.
oh
like
yeah,
that. It just seems like there are not good resources out there for knowing what to do to help or telling
it is.
people
Well,
going to school what
a lot of times the way it starts out for those is like you have to start with volunteer, and then they just kind of gradually fall into it is what it seems like to me. But it's very hard. I mean, Innocence Project is a huge one, and they get a lot of support and everything like that, but they're only looking for people who are not guilty of their crimes and trying to get them out.
Yeah.
And even with that super narrow focus, they still have a bigger workload than they can handle.
Yeah, and I do. Obviously, Innocence Project. If finding people that are innocent, we should be getting them out of jail, obviously.
Right.
But there also should be projects to get rehabilitated people into society better. Find the people who deserve parole. And,
Yeah, I mean that was the thing. I was looking for that constantly.
Yeah.
I was looking for, look, this is too much. This is too. I mean, I've got basically I had a 10-year prison sentence, which I'm still doing the parole on right now, plus 10 years probation on top of that, and there was no reason to be sitting in prison, and that's also it also has to do with mandatory minimums, which are like you have to spend depending on your type of offense, you have to spend half of your sentence in prison and stuff like that. And there's all these other things that tie into it, and it's hard. Like there's a lot of things to untangle, but like I said, like just like the Innocence Project gets hung up on the one thing it has. One thing I feel like a lot of people get hung up on really badly, and it kind of detracts from helping this whole issue, is the death penalty. The death penalty is, it's awful. It's like arguably the most awful part of this whole system. But if you attack it, if you start with, this is the death penalty and we need to get rid of it, well, you're ignoring everything else that led up to the death penalty, and you need to get rid of everything else. If you get rid of everything before it, the death penalty will fall off on its own. But if you attack the death penalty and ignore everything else, then why would they get rid of the death penalty? Because they've got you busy and distracted from all the other stuff they're doing that they don't want you to pay attention to.
Does Colorado? I don't actually know. Does Colorado have legal death penalty? I know where I was at before.
I don't think Colorado has a death penalty.
Okay, I didn't think so.
Texas definitely
Texas
does. Texas is big on that. So
yeah, certainly would like not to have the death penalty anywhere in the States, but I agree with you. Those cases are so there's so much involved in them already that even if we did fix those, it would have such a small impact on society as a whole, I guess.
yeah.
But anyway, should probably wrap it up at this point.
Yes.
Sorry to.
No, it's no problem. We can wrap it up. And
Yeah.
but thank you for being our first in-person guest. Well, we've had one in-person guest before, but he basically crashed Malone's apartment. So that was this. Thank you for being the first one who was invited, first invited guest.
That's great.
Yeah. Hopefully, we can have you back and we can talk some more. And yeah, it'll be great.
I'm sure I'll be around at least the building more.
Cool. But thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening. The Shakedown is recorded in luxurious Longmont Public Media Studios, and our theme song, Shakedown, is provided by Envato Elements.